Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly self-awakened one. The Adita Pariyaya Sutta, the Fire Discourse. I have heard that on one occasion the Blessed One was staying in Gaya at Gaya Head with 1,000 monks. There he addressed the monks. Monks, everything is a flame. What everything is flame? The eye is a flame. Forms are a flame. Eye consciousness is a flame. Contact with the eye is a flame. And whatever there is that arises in dependence on contact with the eye, experienced as pleasure, pain, or neither pleasure nor pain, that too is a flame. A flame with what? A flame with the fire of passion, the fire of aversion, the fire of delusion. A flame, I tell you, with birth, aging, and death, with sorrow, lamentation, pain, distress, and despair. The ear is a flame. Sounds are a flame. Ear consciousness is a flame. Contact within the ear is a flame. And whatever there is that arises in dependence on contact at the ear, experienced as pleasure, pain, or neither pleasure nor pain, that too is a flame. A flame with what? A flame with the fire of passion, the fire of aversion, the fire of delusion. A flame, I tell you, with birth, aging, and death, with sorrow, lamentation, pain, distress, and despair. The nose is a flame. Odors are a flame. Nose consciousness is a flame. Contact with the nose, a flame. And whatever there is that arises in dependence on contact at the nose, experienced as pleasure, pain, or neither pleasure nor pain, that too is a flame. A flame with what? A flame with the fire of passion, the fire of aversion, the fire of delusion. A flame, I tell you, with birth, aging, and death, with sorrow, lamentation, pain, distress, and despair. The tongue is a flame. Flavors are a flame. The tongue consciousness is a flame. Taste contact is a flame. And whatever there is that arises in dependence on contact of the tongue, experienced as pleasure, pain, or neither pleasure nor pain, that too is a flame. A flame with what? A flame with the fire of passion, the fire of aversion, the fire of delusion. A flame, I tell you, with birth, aging, and death, with sorrow, lamentation, pain, and distress, and despair. The body is a flame. Tactile sensations are a flame. Body consciousness is a flame. Contact with the body is a flame. And whatever there is that arises in dependence on contact with the body, experienced as pleasure, pain, or neither pleasure nor pain, that too is a flame. A flame with what? A flame with the fire of passion, the fire of aversion, the fire of delusion. A flame, I tell you, with birth, aging, and death, with sorrow, lamentation, pain, distress, and despair. The intellect is a flame. Ideas are a flame. Mind consciousness is a flame. Contact within the mind is a flame. And whatever there is that arises in dependence on contact at the mind, experienced as pleasure, pain, or neither pleasure nor pain, that too is a flame. A flame with what? A flame with the fire of passion, the fire of aversion, the fire of delusion. A flame, I tell you, with birth, aging, and death, with sorrow, lamentation, pain, distress, and despair. Seeing thus, the instructed noble disciple grows disenchanted in the eye, disenchanted in forms, disenchanted in eye consciousness, disenchanted in contact with the I. And whatever there is that arises in dependence on contact with the I, experienced as pleasure, pain, or neither pleasure nor pain, with that true, he grows disenchanted. He grows disenchanted in the ear, disenchanted in sounds, disenchanted with ear consciousness, disenchanted in contact with the ear, and whatever there is that arises in dependence on contact with the ear, experienced as pleasure, pain, or neither pleasure nor pain, with that too he grows disenchanted. He grows disenchanted in the nose, disenchanted in the odors, disenchanted in nose consciousness, disenchanted in contact with the nose. And whatever there is that arises in dependence on contact with the nose, experienced as pleasure, pain, or neither pleasure nor pain, with that true, he grows disenchanted. He grows disenchanted in the tongue, disenchanted in flavors, disenchanted in tongue consciousness, disenchanted in contact with the tongue. And whatever there is that arises in dependence on contact with the tongue, experienced as pleasure, pain, or neither pleasure nor pain, with that too he grows disenchanted. He grows disenchanted in the body, disenchanted in tactile sensation, disenchanted in body consciousness, disenchanted in contact with the body. And whatever there is that arises dependence on contact with the body, he is experienced as pleasure, pain, or neither pleasure nor pain. With that too he grows disenchanted. He grows disenchanted in the intellect, disenchanted in ideas, disenchanted in consciousness with the intellect, disenchanted in contact with the intellect. And whatever there is that arises in dependence on contact with the intellect, experienced as pleasure, pain, or neither pleasure nor pain, with that too he grows disenchanted. Disenchanted he becomes dispassionate. Through dispassion he is released. With release there is the knowledge. Released, he discerns that birth is ended, the holy life fulfilled, the task done. There is nothing further for this world. That is what the Blessed One said. Glad at the heart, the monks delighted at his words, and while this explanation was being given, the hearts of the 1,000 monks, through lack of clinging, were released from the mental effluence. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. That's kind of a lengthy discourse, though it's considered not a lengthy one. And it's quite similar to the discourse on non-self characteristics. And you could see that even, he was talking to these fire worshippers that had converted after he had beat their master in a debate. So the story behind this sutta is that he had come to this region in order to debate, and or they had come to him in a way, and when their master had felt defeated, then the Buddha gave this beautiful discourse to the fire worshippers about the world aflame. And we could even say in this time, if you used a flood, you could say the same. You can use a lot of analogies for how we're flooded with sensation and attachment. We're swept up in it, caught up in it. The turbulence. Flames are much the same way as fire, so I was happy to share that with you. I see that Quinn has a hand raised. Quinn, do you have a question, or are you just wanting a high five? Yes. I think that is what arises is a dispassion. It's a realism. It's a, we don't need to be swept up and caught up in them or attached to them. So it's non-clinging to the mental effluents that are making so much importance of our senses, our self-importance. That's why it's kind of tied to the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta, because, and that one he gave to the 5 disciples. So there was originally the 5 disciples, shortly after he did the first turning of the wheel of Dhamma. So he gave them the discourse on non-self characteristics, which has the similar ending where glad at heart, the group of 5 monks delighted at his words, and while this explanation was being given, the hearts of the group of 5 monks, through lack of clinging, were released effluents from the mind. So these effluents, this is a way of describing this self-importance. This thinking that the self is really a permanent thing, this Atman or Atta, it's like, it's something that we cling to. And if we have realization, then we can become dispassionate about it, disenchanted. So we grow disenchanted, right? You're disenchanted, and then you become dispassionate. So passion is suffering along with, you're caught up in this suffering. Passion is a suffering, and compassion is suffering along with. So we're wanting to not suffer along with all of these attachments, right? You become dispassionate and you release. When you're released from these mental effluents, you're free and happy. You become joyful because you're like, oh, thank goodness this burden has been shed. So this is what I see in it. Does that help? Does anybody else have any feeling on it? I think the dispassion is to realize that you're no longer suffering along with all of your senses. You can try it with a few. I mean, maybe you can't do it all at once. Like this one, he was giving it so that everyone would get it all together. And you could do it with one at a time. You can just break them down over time. You just have to look at, I was really passionate about seeing something or hearing something or the smell. One of the monks at Wat Buddhanusorn just recently gave a talk about craving a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right? So, which I really thought was quite nice. I was like, oh yes, the peanut butter and jelly sandwich crave. That's a taste, and a smell and a feel, this thing that we're passionate about, and then you no longer have it, and you get to free yourself from that craving. And then when you have one, you're like, oh, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. You don't need to be so passionate about it. You can just be like, oh, this is sustenance. So, kind of my take on it. I prefer almond butter myself than peanut butter, but so there can be a lot of things to discuss about the Buddha's teachings. I don't think it's so much a philosophy, though. I think it's something you need to put into practice. And that discourse was very instructional. It was like instruction manual, like the 101. This is like basic Buddhist discourse, and something that we need to try to come to terms with in our practice. Just like the non-self discourse. That was such a deep, profound teaching. You know, after Anya Kandanya had full realization of things as they are, this non-self discourse allowed the others to see clearly, oh, yes, we are clinging. They still had some attitude or perception of clinging, and the Buddha was able to help them release that mental effluent. Effluent, you could almost say it's the sewage flow of the mind. There's a lot of stuff flowing through your mind, and you're swimming against the current, so you're going to come up against a few big effluents, and don't swallow them. You just have to go through and not be attached. It's like Buddhism is a way to put on your scuba gear and swim through the sewer. You have to guard your senses, guard your thoughts, all your feelings, your perceptions, your consciousness, everything. You're trying to protect yourself from the really disgusting nature in your own mind. I think this is the cure. This is the way to get through it. This is the prescription, I guess. You'd say the prescription that leads to the cure. So does anybody at Wat Buddhanusorn have any feelings or questions or want to discuss anything? It's the central. Yeah, it's the central organ. All of our other things are kind of peripheral organs, right? But we have to live with our mind consciousness. We sleep with it. It's flowing along. It touches and reaches out into all of our organs. It can move. Your consciousness is able to move, even out of your body. It can travel. I feel it traveling in this room when I look somewhere or think, oh, there's that, and it will travel that distance instantly. And when it makes contact, then it's trying to judge, right? It's trying to decide, right? And the mind's nature, I always like to say that the Dhamma nature of the mind is only just like this. That's where you have the decision to make, like, oh, I like, I dislike, I don't care, right? It's just such a small thing. even watching your breath, if you watch the rising and falling, it's only this much. And if you're trying to attach, if you're trying to cling, then you're maybe missing the point, right? The present moment, you only have all this stuff going on, right? And you can't attach to any of it. The mind is wanting to attach. It's wanting to bring self to bear on everything that it touches, everything that you see, hear, smell, taste, touch, think about. It's bringing this self-awareness, this clinging, which is kind of a pile of effluence, you know? It's a big pile. You have to clean that up. You have to use these tools that the Buddha was giving us to purify our mind, because our minds are full of the effluence, the taints. We bring them along from early on, right? We are not free from those until like the very end. Like that full enlightenment, they all fall away. That's why the Buddha is saying, or he's noticing, he's probably, he's saying the discourse, and then he's noticing the hearts of the 1,000 monks, through lack of clinging, were released from the mental effluence. To be able to perceive that, the heart, right? Our hearts are limited by the effluence. Once our heart is released from this, we are a different being. We are an awakened being. No clinging, no suffering, no attachment. You can feel it in your heart. If you really are meditating, there's like a little heaviness, right? You smile and it releases a little bit, you smile a little more. If you are fully released, the face, completely changes. Your countenance is completely different. If you've watched monks or other people that are meditating and attain a jhana, right? And you see their face. Say they're in the first jhana and they're totally joyful. Piti, joy is high, and you'll see the face is like the glow, they're just released. They're no longer clinging. They're not bound. I was in Wat Buddhanusorn in Thailand one time and was meditating, and I saw one of the monks sitting up on the stage, and he just started getting more and more joyful. You could see it rising. And then he was just, his countenance was this beaming, radiant, smiling, joyful. You could also see the suffering in others. You can see it. If you're watching, you can see people being affected by releasing, by non-clinging. It's like the crap falls away and there's just this beautiful diamond of a person, That's what like when I'm polishing my rocks, right? I do my little rock polishing meditation. and I'm looking at a rough rock. It doesn't have, I can't see into it, right? And I polish and I polish and I polish. I'm like, I start to see something. I get finer grit sandpaper and I see more, and then finer and finer. When you're getting down to super smooth, you can see like glass into the rock. That's what we try to do with our practice, is trying to polish away some of this coarseness, this gross nature. And we have to keep coming back to it. We have to keep coming back, because it doesn't take much to get more of the problems. The wrong kind of interaction, something happens on the road or in your house. It can happen anywhere. So I see a hand up for Richard. He's probably ready for a high five. Go ahead, Mr. Richard. Oh, yes. The history of Buddhism is phenomenal. When I was studying it, from Professor Colette Cox at the University of Washington, and she started to really lay out some of the history and show these scholars that were, talking about it in the, 1800s, and you're just like, oh, and then it started really picking up. But it was known by, many people throughout Europe as a dominant religion and philosophy and practice. So, and it really started taking off in intellectual circles, and a lot of people would write about the Oriental philosophy, and some became quite prominent scholars, and some even ordained. There were people that were becoming ordained, which was almost unheard of. They would go to Asia and they wouldn't come back. They would just disappear. They would say, oh, this is the path that I must have been seeking. So, yeah, I love the history of Buddhism. I think it has a few more years or centuries in it, I'm sure. So I see Chris has a hand up too. I'm glad you're around, Chris. I saw you pop in and out and changing clothes. We got to see the whole thing. You had your camera on. You were. Oh. Yeah, no short shorts, or tank tops, spaghetti straps, no spaghetti straps. So, yeah, appreciate your modesty, Chris. Thank you. Was that all you had to? Okay, so this is a meditation question by our friend Chris. Okay, about awareness of breathing. And there are different teachers that talk about different awareness, and the awareness of the nostrils and the sensation. Sometimes they say you pay attention to the coolness, or the heat even. So there's something you're paying attention to This is a way of bringing concentration, right? You're being concentrated in your breathing. So this is a samadhi practice, a concentration, and you'll want to be developing awareness of sensation. Now, it's kind of a precursor to watching things as they arise and pass too. So you're trying to develop that so that you can start to notice or have awareness of and insight to the arising and passing. So I've used that technique before, and it is a good stage. You want to develop something that works for you, that you're comfortable with, you're right. And that could be any number of breathing techniques. And so I would say work on a few that will bring your awareness into a good whole state. I think when we are concentrating too much, there's a tendency to get tension or headaches. So you want to watch for that and release that tension. So you might look into the TWIM practice, Tranquil Wisdom Insight Meditation. So that is a good practice. It's watching the breath, but it's also working on relaxing and calming any tension or anxieties or anything like that that is arising in the mind. So your concentration on breath is a samadhi practice, right? And you can pay attention to the rising and falling of the chest as well, because that is something you can also notice. There's a movement. So we're watching movement, right? Whether it be at the nostril, there's the movement of the breath. You can't hold on to the breath, right? It's wanting to pass. So it's breathing in, breathing out, right? It's either rising or falling. There's space in there too where there's no breath. There's also the subtleness of breath. You might want to look at the Anapanasati Sutta as well for reference. So the TWIM practice, the Anapanasati, there's also great discourses on the awareness of, or insight into breathing. So you'll want to see what works for you. I like to start out with some concentration, even if it's counting breaths. That can be a good way of, breathing in, breathing out, one breath. That's one full breath. Breathing in, out, 2, and I'll go up to 10, and then sometimes I'll work back down, from 10, 9, 8, 7 down to 1. It's just to bring that concentration, that awareness into focus. And then after that, I'm watching for subtler things. I'm watching for, am I attaching to something that I'm hearing? So I'm watching if I'm clinging to something, right? If I'm paying attention too much to hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, right? Or if I'm just letting the moment flow along. Because that is what I want to get to, is where I'm in natural state, comfort, I'm in this comfortable, tranquil state. And then I let my mind be free from the effluence or the garbage that I've accumulated, right? So just try some different techniques. I would say you want to work up pretty quickly to an hour of meditation. in a session so that you are able to really discern what it is that you are dealing with. What are some of your bigger attachment issues? Because if in 20 minutes you're not catching something that you're attached to, and you feel like, oh, this is easy, I can do 20 minutes anytime, then you want to strive a little harder to where you're seeing, where am I attaching? Oh, is it my device? I have to get onto my schedule. I have to go check this. Because we can get attached to our devices too. Or our vices, things that these are things we cling to. Oh, I need to go out and smoke a cigarette or drink a coffee. Oh, I can't sit for 20 minutes. I need to get a coffee. I'm drinking water, by the way. It's perfectly safe and legal. So you're going to want to try to work up to a state where you're noticing, where do you feel a little agitation or discomfort in that clinging mode. It's not in the pain mode. We're not looking for discomfort and pain, but something that is making you, like, oh, boy, I need to listen to some music now. I've sat for 20 minutes without hearing a tune or a jingle. Oh, I need to hear that jingle, something. And so you're going to watch for these things that you're drawn to. And that's where you really do the work. What are you drawn to? What do you need to become more dispassionate about? Disenchanted, right? So that's where I would recommend. Breathing should become natural and just part of your flow, but your mind is what you need to really gauge. So does that help a little bit? Write them down. Oh. We'll try some meditation music. Some of these things that are just like they are kind of like megahertz, certain, what do they call them? Frequencies. And try listening for a few minutes, like 5 or 10 minutes, right? And then shut it off. And then see if you are allowing that resonance in your mind, right? See how long it resonates. In the Buddhist teachings, we used to look at discs, right? We would look at a disc and it was certain color. We'd look at it for minutes. We're staring at this disc and we're trying to develop an impression in our mind on it. And then without the disc, we want to be able to see that image in our mind and be able to contract and expand and kind of work with it. So we're using the objects of our meditation, whether it be sound or sight or something, to see if we have control. And you'll pretty soon, see that you don't have ultimate control, but you can develop a lot of control. So see if you can control some of that awareness of, say, sound. And use like frequencies. it's like sound meditation. And so listen to something for a little while, and then concentrate on it. Bring your awareness to bear. See if you become somewhat disenchanted and dispassionate through control. So that's what we're working on, is trying to bring the reins of the mind, under our control. We're not free rein, though some of us are, they're just out of control. There are no reins. But we are reining this mind under control. Some other time I can talk about horse analogies that the Buddha gave, and like, or other natural things. But he's trying to show that we can get control of this vehicle, and through that we'll have awareness, insight, and release. Right? That's what we're trying to get. We're trying to be released. You're still in your development practice, and you'll get it. So I wish you well, Chris, and write down your questions. We'll get to it another time. You're welcome. I appreciate everybody coming tonight. We're going to have our closing homage pretty soon. Victor, what do you think? Is it about time? I think I can do it on Zoom. I'll be in LA, I think the 19th through the 23rd. I'm not sure when I'm getting back up to Fremont, but I think I can do it on Zoom if you need. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm more than happy to help, and please give my regards to Lompo Prasert and the Sangha at Wat Buddhanusorn. I miss them and I wish them well. I've followed them on Facebook a little bit, seeing that there's a lot going on, and I certainly wish I could have been there for that winter retreat, but I also had duties here. A lot of people here are in Vietnam, so I'm working hard here, washing dishes for breakfast and lunch. I'm doing gardening and taking out the and landscaping. With so many monks gone, my workload is at least doubled or tripled. So, but I'm happy to help with the Zoom anytime. I'm happy to. So. Kind regards to everybody. Let's do our closing homage. I have it memorized, so Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi. Soakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Supatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. May we all have good health, happiness, and peace. Ayuwano Sukhang Palang.